Hello, how are you? How are you all? Welcome to this community called GORILA, where the intention is simple, to connect with you in a more playful and entertaining way about such a technical and tough field as lifting and industrial safety in general. So stay tuned to see all the material. My name is Sergio Jelincic, and today we're going to talk about GORILA chain slings, specifically grade 8. So there are a couple of questions like, what is a chain sling? What is it used for? Where is it recommended to use this element? And what should you never do when using it? And also, obviously, how to know what makes GORILA different from its competitors. And finally, some criteria and practical tips on how to inspect. But before I share all these answers with you, I invite you to subscribe and follow this channel, which is growing day by day. What is this element? This element is another product in the sling category. In this sense, it is a chain sling. What does this mean? It is an element that has different parts, such as hooks, chain, one-link connectors. You can see this type of element in different ways, such as from one branch to 4 branches, as well as in some other formats such as basket type or endless. This particular product has many advantages. Supports 1 to 4 legs, handles 80 tons, safety factor 4. We are covered under ASME 30 and EN 818 standards. And it's super important to highlight that at least for these elements here, we are covered under 2 regulations. On one hand, the American one, ASME 30, and also the EN 818, which is a European standard. Both standards have a safety factor of 4. Where can you use this element? You can see its use often in situations involving edges or stress, where there are critical situations or high temperatures. For example, you can see this in construction where products are not taken care of, in workshops, and especially in foundries. And why in foundries? These elements are usually faced with edge or stress situations where there are critical or high temperature scenarios. For example, you can see this in construction where products aren't taken care of, in workshops, and especially in foundries. And in foundries, because steel chain has a great tolerance to temperature, where you can work up to, if I'm not mistaken, 204 degrees Celsius. Once you exceed 200 degrees Celsius, there's a temporary reduction in load capacity. When you reach 204 degrees Celsius, there's a temporary decrease in load capacity of 10%. If you exceed a temperature of 534 degrees Celsius, you must immediately take this element out of service. Because between 200 degrees Celsius and 500 degrees Celsius, you have a temporary reduction in the load capacity, but then once you exceed that temperature, you have a permanent reduction. Therefore, the element has to be taken out of service. Some tips on what you certainly shouldn't do when performing these maneuvers, which I've seen in some countries, are where operators, due to bad practices and wanting to make the product last longer, create certain procedures. What are these procedures? For example, if they are missing the hook, they buy some hook that is not certified and they somehow just assemble it. On the other hand, I have also had to see when the chain presents deformation or elongation, simply cannot find a better idea than to be able to weld the chain. None of those processes should be done. Another thing I've seen is that when the element is missing the safety latch, they continue to operate it. That should never be done. So what makes GORILA unique compared to its competitors? Here, you have to take them into account because there are many differences. Number one, as I mentioned, GORILA is certified and backed by 2 regulations, the American ASME 30 and the European EN 818. It's true that both require a load capacity of at least 4 times the safety factor that you can tolerate. What does this mean? If I'm going to lift with a sling that supports 1 ton, it should break at over 4 tons. But that's fine. But what makes us different and unique? The common denominator in the market is that they simply don't respect traceability, and that makes GORILA very different. What does this mean? All the accessories themselves, whether they are links, connectors, chains, hooks, etc., they come with traceability that is embossed, and not just any traceability. First of all, it comes with the load capacity, the batch number, the dimensions of the element in millimeters, as well as a batch number. And why is it important to have traceability in the batch numbers? Because in some way with that, you can gather information even about the process that was used in the element with the steel casting that was worked on. So, what else makes us unique and irreplaceable? Here, we can have an element with different batch codes. Steel casting 2015, hook 2017, chain 2021, upper hook 2022. different steel castings, unique label, 10 slings, 10 certificates, traceability crucial for decisions. This means that I have different steel castings from my production process, but the label comes with a unique traceability, which is unique and unrepeatable. If you buy 10 slings, you'll have 10 certificates, and in this sense, our unique number relates all the information of the chain, which is really important when you need to track traceability and make decisions regarding removal criteria or when there is an incident or accident. So, practical tips that you always need to keep in mind when inspecting, as I've said before, from head to toe. What is the head? What are the feet? From head to toe, head, feet. And this means that ideally, you should have it on some table to check or also spread out on the floor. Why is it important? Because you have to check that the link is not deformed, that its traceability is found, as I mentioned previously, with the brand, with the load capacity, with a batch number. In the case of connectors, it's important to check that they are pivoting correctly. Sometimes you can find them jammed, and to find out if they are jammed, there are two possibilities. Either they have deformation or elongation, or they are dirty. For this reason, the recommendation is to always carry an additive on hand. In this case, it could be a double 40 or something similar, to be able to simply check if it is seized by dirt or simply by deformation and elongation. Then when you lower them, you will find the label. Remember, if there's no label, the item is taken out of service, and if there is a label, it's also important to check it. And why is it important to check the label? Because on the label, you need to see that all the information is present. Now, what is all the information? Regulations require key identifiers and legibility. Inspect the chain, especially the weld joint, crucial for electrofusion chains. It's the breaking point for material fatigue. Check for deformation or elongation with a caliper. Ensure the link is 10 mm or more. Then, as you go down, you need to check the chain. And when I mentioned that these products are manufactured using an electrofusion process, the most delicate part of the chain to inspect is the weld joint. It's the breaking point where this element can experience some material fatigue, just as I mentioned earlier, about the chain made through an electrofusion process. The weld joint is one of the critical points when inspecting the chain, but also to carefully check if there is any deformation or elongation in the chain. You need to take a caliper and thoroughly ensure that the link measures 10 mm size. Therefore, a very simple test to perform is to check the measurement inside the chain link, and in this case, it measures less than 30 mm. What does this mean? It should never exceed 3 times the diameter of the chain. If there's a 1 mm difference, take it out of service immediately. Check the hook or connector on the descending part to ensure it's working and not jammed. Use lubricant if needed. Ensure no deformation over 15%. Compare with supplier's catalog and cross-reference with a caliper or tool. These checks ensure safe equipment use. You also need to check that there is no deformation greater than 15%. And to compare easily, you should review the information in your supplier's catalog and then cross-check that information with a caliper or any other measuring tool you might have. Taking these considerations into account, there should be no problem for you to use your maneuver safely. Now, an important fact. Although it is true that it is resistant to high temperatures, always make sure that the product is not stepped on, twisted, has visible welding sparks, or has not been manipulated by a third party not certified in the handling of this element in order to manufacture it. Without further ado, with nothing else to add, I just want to thank you for staying with us until now and keep watching the upcoming content. Thank you very much.